Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Kimberly O'Neil, and I am the CEO of Giving Blueprint and the founder of Cause Studio. We are a consultancy that focuses on community and economic initiatives around the United States, especially as it relates to preserving and protecting the Black community. Cause Studio was started about 7 years ago, actually 7 years ago on January 31st. And our goal was simple. We wanted to reduce the number of failing nonprofits around the country. And so what we do is we provide training, really in-depth training to nonprofit startups, whether it be live, whether it be virtual, or a combination of the two, to provide answers to those questions that sometimes you're wondering. If you're a founder of a nonprofit, where do people learn those things? Where do we get that information? How do I stay in compliance? We focus on filling in the gaps of information that you typically don't hear about when you go to other trainings. One of the things that I've been doing over the past few months is I have been training people on different aspects of fundraising for nonprofit startups, specifically Black-led nonprofit startups, and getting organizations and leadership to understand how you position yourself better, how to increase capacity within your organizations, with the ultimate goal of increasing the revenue that's coming into your nonprofits each and every year. But one of the things that I'm often asked is, how do you pick a nonprofit consultant? How do you know that you're picking the right nonprofit consultant? Should we pay them hourly? Should we pay them a flat fee? Should we pay them a percentage of the revenue that they may be able to get us via grants? And I wanted to do a short training that will answer some of those questions and then leave opportunity for you to engage with me in the chat so that I can answer some of the more specific questions that you have. If you are watching this after we go live, just hit hashtag replay so that when I'm going back and I'm looking at comments, I'll know that I need to respond to your questions, or possibly somebody on my team may be able to do it as well. So for today, I want to focus on the things that you need to know before hiring a nonprofit consultant. The things that you need to know before hiring a nonprofit consultant. So before I even get into that, let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I mentioned I'm the CEO of Giving Blueprint, and then Cause Studio, which is our nonprofit startup training initiative, falls underneath our company. I am an award-winning social innovator, I'm an award-winning professor, and I'm an award-winning entrepreneur as well. I teach undergrad and graduate classes around political science and public administration, with a concentrating in nonprofit management. I have been awarded for helping to build and increase the capacity in small nonprofit organizations. Some of the things that I'm most proud about is being able to move organizations from $9,000 within 2 years of operation to within 6 months of working with us, we were able to cross six figures. Or another organization where we were there the day they actually mailed their paperwork off to the IRS. And in less than 7 years, they've been able to scale that organization and are crossing over that seven-figure mark as we speak. And so I get joy in helping people to figure out what some of the deficiencies are, what are those gaps within their organizations, within their companies, and within our communities, and figuring out how can we move those things forward. My background primarily, though, however, is in municipal management. I spent more than 20 years working in governments around the country and shifted in my career at the end of 2010. And since that time, I have been laser focused on working in the business and nonprofit communities. As it relates to fundraising, I've raised more than $20 million in my career. Although I am a fundraiser, that is not my core area, so I don't actively engage in fundraising all the time. And I've managed budgets in excess of $33 million. When we launched Cause Studio in 2015, I don't know what I expected to do in the very beginning. All I know is people kept telling me, large organizations, philanthropists kept telling me that who I wanted to concentrate on in terms of the nonprofit startup community. And let me define that. Nonprofit startups, to me and to my company, means organizations who have not been in in operation in terms of their 501c3 status for more than 5 years, they have not been able to bring in more than $250,000 annually on a recurring basis. That's what we're looking for. So if you've had an organization, a nonprofit for at least 20 years, but you're still struggling to pass $50,000 a year, to us, you are still considered a nonprofit startup. And let me tell you why it's important that we get organizations past $50,000. Number one, it talks about your 990. When it comes to your 990, if you historically are not bringing in more than $50,000 a year, what you are filing is a 990N, also known as the postcard 990, and that's the form that you give to the IRS every single year. With that postcard 990, if what you're telling the IRS is you've not brought that money in, but that also means that for many funders who require a 990, either a 990EZ or a 990, a full 990N, you're not going to qualify for funding opportunities. But 1 out of every 2 new nonprofits fail within their first 12 months. And it is known that organizations that do not bring in more than $100,000 in an operating budget or an income every single year have a higher probability of failing every single year. So most times, as people that have heard me talk about increasing capacity within organizations, many people focus on building organizations, especially our founders, from a place of passion and purpose. That's not a sustainable concept. You have to truly understand your data. You have to understand the problem and the need. You have to ensure that your programs and services align with your values, the problems and the needs of the community. But more importantly, in order to raise funds and to bring that money into the organization, you have to do it in a way that's more methodical, that's rooted in strategic planning, that's rooted in evaluation. And that is one of the things we try to help organizations to understand. We want you to tell and share your community and economic impact on your communities that you're serving, not just the good feeling stories. We want you to share, because of the work that you're doing, in a quantifiable way, what kind of direct and indirect impacts are you seeing happening within the communities. One of the things that I always say within Cause Studios, we only train winners. We do not train losers. We train people that are committed to increasing the capacity within their organizations, ensuring that their operations, while it may not be perfect, that every single year they're moving towards a place and a point where they're trying to become more efficient and more effective in the work that they're doing, because they know that that is going to increase the probability of how they're going to be able to sustain their organizations on a higher level. Our clients have been recognized with awards, with financial funding. We have won pitch competitions. And when we started, I would say probably at this particular point, because I haven't updated our numbers in about 2 months, for sure, we have helped organizations raise in excess of $1 million in cash. And we've done about the same in in-kind donations. And at this particular point, we're probably closer to serving 4,000 nonprofit professionals since we launched in January of 2015. So I figure that's not too bad for an organization and an initiative that people say was not needed. But what they began to realize is, although larger organizations said that we weren't needed, the community told me something different. So while I knew from the data perspective that what we were creating was needed, we didn't rely on the powers that be to tell us that we needed to move forward. We relied on the community to tell us whether or not we were needed. And that is why we are still here today. So for today, I get a lot of requests for doing more one-on-one, hands-on consulting with nonprofits. And while we do provide some one-on-one services, many of the nonprofit fundraising services that people are looking for, that's something that our company does not provide. Where we can make recommendations to reliable nonprofit fundraising consultants, we do that. But for the most part, I thought it was important today to share what you should be looking for, what you should be considering if you're thinking about starting a relationship with a nonprofit consultant. So if you just have I don't think it's going to take us more than 15 to 20 minutes, but I put together some some ideas and some clues and some tips that I think will be very helpful for you. If you're looking for a nonprofit consultant, you don't know where to start, and you're quite honestly, you don't know what you should and shouldn't do. So if you join me just and entertain me as I give you this information for a little while, we'll go through some of the material that I have. But like I said, I'm going to try to zero this in within 15 minutes so that you can, as you're hearing some of the things that I'm sharing, again, if I don't see your questions as you're reviewing this, just make sure you leave them, because I will go back and answer them for you. Because I do go through all comments anytime I do any live training in this way. So let's talk about what you should be looking for when you're looking for a nonprofit consultant that has a specialty or specializes in fundraiser. When you're looking at what types of work a nonprofit consultant, a fundraising consultant should do, organizations may choose to engage or with outside fundraisers in a variety of ways. Sometimes it may be to help with your existing issues or opportunities or initiatives. Sometimes it's to help you create new initiatives and opportunities. And sometimes you're hiring them because you do not have time. It's just about the time. You might have the team, you might not have the team, but sometimes you just might not have the time. And you need someone with a specialized skill set to come in and support the organization. Sometimes you need them to come in and supplement the work that you're already doing. Maybe you have a team, but there's some additional needs on the project and you may not have the human capital to focus on that. And what you're going to do is bring in someone else to be able to support. Or maybe you're looking for a fundraising consultant to come in to try and help, to not just to try and help, to help your team identify the road that they should be taking. So sort of like train the trainer. So you may have people that will be responsible for it inside, and you'll bring in a consultant to help you to figure out what you can and cannot do. So the role of professional consultants when it comes to nonprofit organizations will largely depend on the size of your organization, the development experience of your staff. Sometimes individual consulting and consulting firms are also hired to provide a variety of specialized services. They can bring in a level of wisdom to your organization's expertise, and quite honestly, sometimes creativity, because they may help you to push the envelope in things that you're not even thinking about. They can also help you to raise funds without being an employee. So oftentimes, sometimes I know with nonprofit startups, we may be able, and I say we because I did found a nonprofit startup at one point, but at sometimes we may not have the manpower, we may not be looking for or in a position to hire employees full-time or even part-time. So consultants can come in and fill that gap for us as well. They are truly known as an economic alternative for your organization. Because they can engage with the work and within your organization without having to commit to the hours of all of the other pieces. They are going to be laser focused on the work that's in front of them, and it's just for a limited time. And so here are some of the things. I want you to take note of this. And then this recording will rest in the social media sphere for as long as I can. So I typically leave things up for a month before I bring them out. But here are some of the things, some of the roles that fundraising, I jotted some of them down as I was thinking about it today. And so if I look down at my notes, it's because I want to make sure I'm getting to all of these different things that I've noted. So the question is, I want to hire a nonprofit consultant, but I don't really know what that means. And I want them to concentrate on fundraising efforts for our organization. What types of things, whatever typically is Kimberly, what types of things can they do? Well, they can work on your capital and special campaigns. So if you have a capital campaign or some other special campaign that's focused on something, a specific type of area, they can work on that. They can create your strategy. They can execute your strategy. They can monitor your strategy. They can also spearhead your annual an operating campaign. So the process, an annual campaign that you facilitate every single year, or an operating campaign, they can be in charge of that. You can bring them in to monitor, or to develop, to monitor, and implement that throughout the year. They can also help to coordinate your planned giving campaigns. So if you focus on planned giving as an aspect of fundraising, they have the ability to come in and coordinate what that looks like for you and utilize their expertise. And before I go on to the other ones, the reason why I'm laying them out one by one is because I want you to specifically hear the different types of fundraising activities and initiatives that can happen in your organization. So if something resonates with you more so than others, you can kind of visualize something a little differently. So when you hear me say things and you might lump it into one category, well, that's all fundraising. But when you're thinking about the intricacies of your fundraising initiatives, I want you to hear the various types of fundraising activities. So for those of you that have never heard these before, you can do some research on the names to get those areas more better defined. You can also begin to ideate, like, I never even thought of that. So that's why I'm going to spell these out for you a little bit more than I would if I was teaching a bigger class on fundraising. They can provide support services. So maybe you have the team, and I mentioned this a few minutes ago. Maybe you have the team, but you need support on implementing the overall plan. Well, they can serve as support services. Fundraising consultants or nonprofit consultants don't need to do the entire job. They can come in and just do a piece of a job. And one of the things, especially when I go into organizations, one of the things that I really concentrate on is I try to pay attention to the dynamics of what's already happening in an organization. I offer advice based on the scope of work that I've been hired for. If I think that they could do something differently, they can work a little bit smarter, I'll offer that up. But I will continue to work on the scope of work that I was hired to do. But I also like to ensure that my clients know about other ways that they can implement the work that they're doing. And sometimes they just don't have the knowledge base for some of the things that I may be more specialized in understanding. They're great. So this is where, like, my sweet spot for my company, we provide advice and consultations on issues. So specifically for what we're talking about, this would be on fundraising issues. But sometimes you can just call a consultant in because you need some advice on what you're doing, and how you can do it better. So you don't necessarily need them to do the work, but you do need them to advise you and guide you in ensuring that you are operating the most effective and efficient ways. They can assist. We also do this too. We assist in institutional readiness prior to the start of initiatives. Again, for this particular conversation, we're talking about fundraising, but nonprofit consultants can come in and assist with institutional readiness prior to the start of any of your fundraising activities. They can help with conducting research and identifying prospects for you, potential donors, potential sponsors, potential partners, but they can do research for you. So that helps to take away some of the burden for what your team is doing, or quite honestly, if you're a nonprofit startup, it might be what you're doing. They can help with grant writing. And I'm gonna put a pin on that because I'm gonna get to what costs should look like as well, what is ethical, what is standard in our sphere, but they can help with grant writing. They can actively guide a fundraising campaign. They can actually help to write out the fundraising campaign. This one is big to me. When you are not sure what you're doing, you don't know if you're going in the right direction, the wrong direction, you don't know if the needle is moving fast. I would say that one of our sweet spots as a consulting community to the nonprofit sector is we help to motivate and train you, your board, your team, your key volunteers, your key staff. Because this is our work, we know how to energize people around it, right? Even when the days don't feel good, because fundraising can take you through series of highs and lows. Sometimes you're just in the middle, but sometimes you can go real high because you've had a wonderful campaign or a wonderful day, and you can hit a real low when you've not hit your milestones. But we have a way of motivating and training people so they understand the dynamics, because sometimes it's not you, sometimes it's just the lay of the land around this fundraising within our sector. And then finally, they provide and we provide just general fundraising expertise. We fill in the gaps. We create opportunities. We make sure we focus on your strengths, so you can focus on your strengths, so we can actually come in and focus on those weaknesses, right? And so we can be great assets to the organization. Now, here's what I do need for you to know. Consultants should be working on, this is the preference, right? So according to the Standards for Excellence Institute, and that's an organization that focuses on standards, national standards for the nonprofit sector, consultants should be working based on a fixed fee. Consultants should be working based on a fixed fee. They can also be paid based on an hourly rate or a flat fee. And all of that has to be mutually agreed upon by both you as the organization and the consultant. My company, we tend to focus on fixed fees and flat rates for all work that we do and establish a scope of work around our responsibilities. So when you are working with fundraising personnel, and you're working with organizations, you must focus on a few key fundraising issues, right? And so one of the things that we want to highlight tonight, and I specifically want to highlight, is you want to avoid any consultant who wants to use some level of a formula to pay you, for you to pay them, or they want you to be compensated for their work. So they want you to compensate them for their work based on a formula or some other type of methodology that's not flat fee, hourly, or a fixed fee. The reason why I stray away from hourly when it comes to my clients is because hourly rates can go high really quickly. And if you are not sure of how to monitor a consultant, and if I'm not sure my client understands the process, it is more important to me that we outline a standard statement of work, and that's the work that we work towards. As a consultant, when we've strayed away from that, we've strayed into problems. We've strayed into the expectations of giving more, that they believe that organizations believe that they need to receive more. And on the flip side, if you are paying a consultant on an hourly basis, you might also feel like you need to micromanage what's happening. And so to avoid all of that, let's just come to an agreement on a set price for a set amount of responsibilities, and we cap out the number of hours we will align to a project. We also are very clear on what the client has to provide to us in a certain amount of time. Again, when you stray away from that level of clarity, oftentimes you end up in a lot of confusion on both sides, and this is something that you really need to avoid. Where it is needed, so you'd have to check with your states to determine whether or not a fundraising consultant actually even needs to be registered as a professional in your state. So you would want to check with your state Secretary of State's office and just ask about some guidance around whether or not fundraising consultants need to be registered as a fundraising consultant for nonprofits within your state. You can also reach out to, I would say, the Association for Fundraising Professionals, and ask them if they have a list of states where fundraising consultants need to be registered. And you want to also make sure that you are very clear on what the consultant can and cannot do on your behalf, how they utilize your logo, how they utilize your name, how they utilize your brand. You don't want to allow a fundraising consultant to kind of run away with a plan that you have not reviewed. you've not answered questions about or asked questions about it, because you want to make sure you're in alignment. You've hired somebody to support you, but you need to be sure that you understand the direction so that the work that they've come up with that aligns with the vision and the values and the mission of your organization. Your brand is very, very important. When we talk about commission-based compensation, so oftentimes you'll hear this broker kind of relationship between fundraising consultants and nonprofits on, we're going to take a percentage of, we wrote 5 grants for you. You don't have to pay us anything up front, but we're going to take, if you get those grants, we'll take a percentage of that. That is unethical. I'm going to repeat that again. Allowing fundraising consultants to take a percentage of the revenue that they bring in or impact on bringing into your organization is unethical. It is considered unprofessional, and it is honestly, it's an amateur. Because those that are professionals in this space and follow the standards in this fundraising space know that taking a percentage or a commission of the work, the revenue that they impact for your organization, they know that it's unethical, right? We all know that about it. So that should not be on the table for negotiation at all. Pay for the services that you are getting. If you choose, and it depends on states, and you can check with the Association for Fundraising Professionals. If you choose to give someone a bonus because they have just done tremendous work, you need to make sure that you can do that, but it should not be based on the actual money that comes into the organization, not commission-based, not percentage-based. This has to be separate and apart. My strong recommendation is that you simply just pay for the services. Flat fee, fixed fee, or hourly rate, which is my least recommended way of doing it. Pay for the services that you need. And then if at the end of the year or you're working with a particular consultant time after time after time again, do some research to make sure you ethically can do that in your state. But if you want to offer somebody a bonus or something in it, that might not be the right term for, because bonus sounds like an employee. But I'm using that terminology to kind of give you a point of reference, but it cannot be based on a percentage or fixed fee of the money that they're bringing in. This is something you're doing separate and aside just because they did an amazing job for your organization. When you are focused on fundraisers and you're working with a nonprofit consultant that focuses on fundraising, you want to make sure that you are prioritizing your most immediate needs and not always your longer term needs, unless they're focusing on like one of your annual campaigns, your capital campaigns, or something along those levels. You want something along those lines. You want to make sure that you're not doing commission-based fundraising as well, because it can be viewed as privately benefiting fundraisers, rather privately benefiting the actual fundraiser, so your nonprofit consultant, rather than it benefiting the public that you're serving through the missions of your organization. Does that make sense? If not, I'm going to say it again. If you are focused on commission or percentage-based formulas to pay your nonprofit consultant, the optics and appearance can show or offer an interpretation that this is a private way of raising funds for the fundraiser, your nonprofit consultant, versus a fundraising activity that brings in revenue to the organization to benefit the work that you're doing within the organization. Okay. Another reason why you really want to stay away from this is because it can come across, and it can actually be, that someone is not working as diligently as they should for your organization when it comes to fundraising. You want to make sure that the responsibility for your consultant is on bringing in the money and doing the best job that they can based on the agreed upon statement of work. Okay. It is important that you all, so the reason why I think that this is important, besides people that have asked me to assist with fundraising, make recommendations for fundraisers, social media. So I have to be honest, social media has made it very easy for people to add nonprofit consultant and fundraiser to their titles, and they've never done the work before. And I don't mean they've not done the work at all. I mean, as a consultant, but sometimes people have become consultants because they've done it for organizations. That counts, right? Because that's experience. But we have too many people that believe they can do it. But I've heard some very scary things on social media, jumping on some of these audio platforms, watching some webinars. I've heard some very scary things that I know immediately that person has no clue what they're doing when it comes to fundraising. So here are some things that I would recommend that you do. Number one, think about when you're developing your scope of work and you have a particular amount of money that you need to raise over a particular, for a year. So say you're looking to raise $250,000 in a year, you should be asking your consultant if they've raised at least $250,000 or more in a particular year. And you should also be asking them, did they do it alone or with a team? Because that's going to make a difference. Someone who has done the work by themselves versus someone who has done it as a team, that means they've had additional resources. So if they're coming to the table by themselves, you need to be sure that they can do it by themselves. It doesn't mean if they've not worked individually before that they can't do it. It doesn't mean that. What it means is you now have additional information to consider before you decide on moving forward with a consultant or not. So ask the questions, ask for references, ask for direct references of organizations where they have actually done the work, and ask for a reference on a leadership level. So not someone who was in the ranks of the organization. You want someone that can call, that will understand, not they were a nice person. They were a nice person, but you know what? They really didn't get to the point we needed them to. We're not talking about, I know grants and things like that. It's a game of chance, but I just don't feel like they weren't effective. You want to make sure you know, not just that they've had clients, but they've been successful in the work that they've done for their clients. You want to ask about their memberships and alignment with any fundraising associations. You want to ask, are they a member of the Association for Fundraising Professionals? Have they been a member for a while? Have they been active in a local chapter? You want to be able to ask them what kind of time commitment, are they doing this full time? Are they doing this on the side? You want to ask them about their availability during the day. If you don't work in the evening and that's their only availability, that might not be a good fit. If their only availability for meetings is on the weekends, you and your team do not do work, this might not be a good fit. So you need to ask the questions that are very relevant to you. If you are working with children and education, you want to ask, have they served educational institutions and nonprofits in terms of fundraising, because you want to make sure that they're familiar with the language. I'll give you an example why. There was an organization that I was familiar with, and I talked to them. They were sharing some of their not so good experiences with a fundraiser. And one of the things that they focused on was human trafficking of teenagers. And the grant writer, who was served as the fundraising consultant, so they were part of a team, when they wrote the grant drafts, they referred to the victims, the young ladies who were trafficked, as prostitutes. That language should never be used in the situation we're talking about, right? And so what it aligned with is you may be a great fundraiser, but you may not be the great fundraiser or team member from that group, from that consulting group to serve our organization because you're not sensitive to the language that you're using. So a fundraiser is not just a fundraiser. You want to fundraise, especially if it's a fundraiser that's writing grants or writing copy for collateral material. You want to make sure it's a fundraiser that has some sort of sensitivity in the work that you're doing, and that you are providing information and correcting them and helping them to understand the brand of the organization, the language that should be used, the things that are considered offensive. You all need to have this relationship. So if you're hiring an outside fundraising consultant, I would recommend looking for one that you're not hiring just for a one-off. You may have to do that in the beginning so you can find your Russell. You may hire somebody. It was okay, an okay experience, but it just didn't feel all the way right. Well, maybe you want to try someone else the next time. And maybe you do that again a third time. And the third time you realize like, this is the organization. Well, then my recommendation to the extent that you can afford it is to continue to use that particular consultant, because that allows you and that person to develop or that team, because it could be more than one person in that consulting group. It allows you all to develop a relationship. It allows that organization to get to know your organization a lot differently, because that allows them to curate your messaging in a way that's beneficial to your organization, represents your organization in the right way, but at the same time allows them to use their skill set and their knowledge of the fundraising community to position it in a way that allows your applications, that allows your initiatives, whatever the case may be, to be elevated to the next level. That is what they should be doing for you. Okay. And so I'm going to kind of stop there. I want to make sure that I wanted to make sure somebody had that conversation with you. This wasn't designed, it probably went a little longer than I thought, but this wasn't designed to be this long training. This was designed to give you some quick information about what you can do and what you need to consider when you're looking for a nonprofit fundraising consultant. So like I said, I'll leave this up in the space for a little while. If you are wondering how you can work with us, we do not provide fundraising services in our organization. We provide training around it, but we do not provide the actual fundraising consulting services unless we're working with a client that already has a plan. We can review it and give some feedback. But in terms of us actually developing, monitoring, and executing your fundraising plans, that's not a service that we offer within our organization, but we do offer leadership training. We do offer cohort-driven trainings. And if that is you and you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us at hello, HELLO, at causestudio.co. So that's hello at causestudio, studio.co, not .com. Reach out and someone on my team will respond and provide you with the various ways that we can work together. We are always looking to bring on new clients within our group style cohort training, which is our preferred way of doing it. We believe in peer learning. So where we provide the guidance, we provide the direct material. Being in an environment, especially as a nonprofit startup, where you can engage with other people who may be going through similar things, or people who have already gone through a tough time or worked through some challenges and can share some of their experience that you can learn from. We find that to be the most effective style when it comes to learning environments for us for when you are a nonprofit startup. So again, my name is Kimberly O'Neil. I'm the CEO of Giving Blueprint and the founder of Cause Studio. I am a mentally retired senior government executive turned licensed nonprofit consultant. And my job is simple. I am here to ignite the power in communities, especially as it relates to our Black communities around the United States. Our specialty is in serving Black-led organizations. And our goal in this year of 2022 is to serve a minimum of 100 Black-led nonprofit organizations, where we move to increase the capacity and the operations within the organization. And we are already off to a great start. So if you also want to be one of those organizations, reach out to us at hello@causestudio.co. We'll be looking for you. We're looking to serve you. And we just thank you for allowing me to, I don't take this for granted. So I just thank you on behalf of myself and my team, and allowing you to serve you in this little bit of time. But be on the lookout, because we are looking to provide more to you this year. So hello@causestudio.o. Reach out to my team, and they will provide you what you need to figure out how you can work with us, or referrals that we may have to some of our peers within the community if you are looking for a fundraising nonprofit consultant. With that being said, thank you for your time. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And I hope to see you in one of our classes soon. Have a great, great day. Bye-bye.